Okay, good morning everyone and welcome to our session, to our TDRA Virtual Academy session. Today's session is the Heart of Effective Listening Part 2, and a big thank you to TDRA for inviting us to present this session to you. A quick introduction to myself. My name is Catherine Bentley. I'm originally from the UK, where my background was really very much in financial services. I moved to the UAE back in 2005, and really my time since being here in the Middle East has been focused purely on training, coaching, and consulting. Whilst I do engage in training sessions for a whole range of different skills, my passion really is communication skills. So I'm very, very pleased to be able to share this session with you today. So, flashback to our first session, to our listening skills part 1 session, if you were able to join or you managed to see the recording on the TDRA Academy YouTube channel. Remember, 85% of what we know, we learn from listening. 85%. So we need to think about that. A very, very large proportion of what we know in life comes from our listening activities. And if you think about what the key takeaways were for the first session from part 1, communication is always a two-way process. Whilst often in communication, we think about communication on the part of a speaker or a sender or an originator of a message, it's always a two-way process. I mean, we need to really think about our skills as listeners. Listening is a much underdeveloped skill. We talked in the first session about listening filters, how these can be to delete, distort, or generalize messages. And we started to look at really what effective listening is, attentive and empathic listening. We also took a look at a couple of the golden rules for active listening. Actively acknowledging the sender, acknowledging the message and being present, being focused on what the message is. And always that communication works well for those who work at it. Key message. Quick flashback to the communication model. As I said a couple of seconds ago, we tend to focus very much in terms of our communication skills on how we develop ourselves as senders of messages, originators, where we think of what the message is, we encode it and we send it. This program is focused on the other side of the model, how we perform as receivers of messages, how we decode, how we develop an understanding, and then give feedback. This is what constitutes the communication model. So that's the backdrop and very much what we focused on in the first session. Communication is a two-way process. Today, our roadmap is to go back to the golden rules of effective listening. In part 1, we considered rules 1 and 2, all about self-management. Today, we're going to take a look at how we observe verbal and non-verbal cues, how we identify emotions which are there in the communication, in the interaction, asking questions and the key role that plays in the whole communication and the feedback process, and how we actually need to be summarizing to confirm understanding clarity. And then we'll take a look at how we put all of this into practice. Where do we start? And how we can identify opportunities for creating magnificent communication at key communication touch points. So, back to the golden rules for listening. Part 1, we talked about the importance of acknowledging the speaker. We talked about the importance of being present. Today, let's consider rules 3, 4, 5, and 6. As we go through today's session, please feel free at any time to put your comments, put your questions on the live chat. I'll be monitoring that along with my colleagues, so we're happy to field questions as we're going along. There will be time for questions at the end as well. All you're actually going to need as we go through is maybe some paper and a pen for a little bit of an interactive exercise a little bit later on. So, golden rule number 3 for effective listening is to really identify the non-verbal messages and signals which are there in what we see in the various communication channels, the non-verbal messages and signals. How important are these? We tend to spend a lot of time thinking about words and understanding the meaning of words, but how important are the other items as well as the words? Well, the researchers, the scientists, the psychologists tell us that non-verbal communication is pretty important. In fact, in a message, only 7% is transmitted via the actual words. Over a third of the message is transmitted via the tone of voice, what we call paraverbal. And well over half of the message is transmitted via non-verbal cues. Now, if that sounds quite incredible, let's have a look at how this actually comes across in practice. So with a little bit of help from friends, let's have a look how this actually happens.
No one told you that was gonna be this way. Your job's a joke, bro. I'm pregnant. And you're the father, by the way, but you got it. Your job's a joke, bro. You're not like the way.
No way I could get him to forgive us.
I don't know.
I'm telling you. I can do it.
Yeah, you can do it.
It's like you're always stuck in second gear.
He was like this crazy-eyed, hairy beast man. He was like a Bigfoot or a Yeti or something. Hi, just so you know, we didn't mean to fog you. We actually thought you were like a Yeti or something. Hi.
So you like the short hair better?
What? Yeti? Danny?
There's a million days a week, a month, or even your year, but
Steve? Hello?
I'll be there for you. I'll be there for you. I'll be there for you.
If you two are happy, then I'm happy for you. I'm fine.
Really?
Absolutely. I'm fine. Totally fine. I don't know why it's coming out all loud and squeaky, because really, I'm fine.
I'll be there for you. There for you.
Joe? Well, I guess Joey went home. Oh, and look, there's still one box that I have to unpack. Oh my God, you almost gave me a heart attack.
Oh,
Still in bed at 10 and work again at 8.
my best friend and my sister. I cannot believe this.
Sorry, but it's true. I love him too.
My best friend. I cannot believe this.
and so far things are going great. Your mother warned you there'd be days like these.
Let's put aside the fact that you accidentally picked up my grandmother's ring and you accidentally proposed to Rachel.
People do this. I don't really know what that means.
I'm sorry.
In your day, your week, your month, even long in I'll be there for you. I'll be there for you. I'll be there for you. You're there for me too. I'll be there for you.
Okay, so video there showing us how a whole range of non-verbal signals are there in the communication process, things that as good listeners, as active, as attentive and empathic listeners, we need to be looking out for, we need to be reading, and we need to be responding to. So let's break those down and let's have a look at each one in detail. Paraverbal. Paraverbal, this is all about the tone of the voice. Is it high pitched? Is it low? Yeah, what is that telling us about the feeling, the mood, the emotion, the intention of the sender? Volume. What's being communicated by a high volume or a low volume? Stress, intonation. All of these are adding a dimension to the message. What is it? What message are they sending? We have an example here. Paraverbal. Yeah, we've got here a sentence, exactly the same words in exactly the same order. Yeah, the way that we actually place stress on one of the words in the sentence can completely change the meaning. First one, I didn't say you were stupid. The implication is I didn't say you were stupid, but maybe I thought you were stupid. I didn't say you were stupid. Maybe I said your friend was stupid. Yeah. I didn't say you were stupid. I might have said something worse. Yeah. I didn't say you were stupid. It was my friend over here who said it. Yeah. So the way that we use the paraverbal, the way that we use the stress, intonation, messages are being sent. As listeners, we need to be identifying what they are. So think about that. Paraverbals. Are you tuned in to paraverbals? Facial expressions can transmit so many different meanings, so many different emotions, so many different intentions. How are you reading them? We've got to consider culture. We've got to consider levels of formality. Yeah, but how are we reading different facial expressions? And how are they adding to the message, which we need to decode, understand, and respond to? We've had, in the past 18 months, a challenge here in terms of mask wearing and a kind of an additional, I guess, task for us to really read facial expressions when people are wearing masks. Yeah, often we've got to look now at eyes, yeah, and what messages the eyes might be sending because we can't always see people noses and mouths with the mask wearing, yeah. But still we have an opportunity to look at facial expressions and how they're adding to the message. Eye contact, where culturally possible, depending on the situation, very important. Yeah, how are we reading this? How are we reading the eye contact and what that's telling us about the sender, about the speaker, about the communicator. Again, considering the culture and levels of formality. A question for you now. A question, let's just see what we all think about this. Who do you think will tend to maintain most eye contact? Do you think it would be the listener or the speaker? Guys, if you want to just give us your thoughts on this, maybe on the live chat, do you think it's more likely that the listener will be maintaining the most eye contact or the speaker? Just give us your thoughts, please, on the live chat. I'll give you a few seconds to tell us what you think, the listener or the speaker. Okay, so I'm getting some people saying both. Okay. Yeah, both. Yeah, a lot of people are saying both. Yeah. Ideally, absolutely. Ideally, absolutely. In real life, the researchers tell us that actually it tends to be the listener who maintains the most eye contact, 70%. So 70% of the time, when they're in a listening situation, they're maintaining the eye contact, and the speaker, only 40%. But you're absolutely right. We've got feedback here on the chat. It's important for both of them. It is. It is. The reality is that the listener tends to be engaging more the eye contact than the speaker. There's something to take away and think about in your own face-to-face communication situations. Posture. We can read quite a lot into a communication by a person's posture, how they're sitting, how they're standing, and what that's telling us about their mood, their intention, and so on. Again, we've got to consider culture, we've got to consider levels of formality. But as a listener, another thing that we've got to really be aware of, and how that builds the overall message that we're receiving. And the other thing, gestures. Gestures. We saw in the video there, Joey was doing the quotation marks gesture. Yeah. There are many, many different gestures, and they mean different things in different cultures. They're used differently depending on the formality of a situation. But again, it's something we've got to really think about. How is that adding to a message? How is it maybe changing a message? Yeah. Another aspect that as listeners, we need to be observing. And then we have the whole area of space. Space. The space that we create between ourselves as a speaker or a listener and the other party. And what that's telling us. What that's telling us about the intention of the communication. We've got to consider again the culture, the formality of the situation. And today we have another aspect in terms of social distancing. Yeah, we don't have necessarily always the same, shall we say, license to use spacing to communicate. But it's something we need to be aware of. And generally, this can be identified in three ways. Public space. So in a formal or in a large gathering, a public space where people are distanced, a social space where people come a little bit closer, and then there's the more intimate space in one-to-one conversations and so on. But what do we read into it? What do we read into the space that people are creating in communication? So all of these together, yeah? All of these together, we need to think about the non-verbal cues, the non-verbal messages that we can pick up in our communication. Rule number 4, this is about identifying emotions in the other party, but also in ourselves. Very, very important. Very, very important that we pick up on this and that we manage this to make the communication, the interaction, successful, impactful. So, question for you now. You may have come across this before, you may not, but let me ask you this question. What percentage of your decisions do you think might be based on emotion? Anybody got any thoughts on that? If you want to maybe tap your answers into the live chat, what percentage of your decisions do you think are based on emotion? Anybody got any thoughts on this? The clue is it's quite a lot. Typically, for a typical human being, it's quite a lot. But what percentage of your decisions do you think might be based on emotion? Okay, so I'm getting here 80%, I think Mary, and 70%. Okay, any more? Any more suggestions, guesses? %, yep, 90%, Nadine, okay. All right, okay, have a look at this little video clip where people give their reactions to this question. How much of their decisions do they think might be based on emotion? Have a look at this.
%50. I'm a very rational person, so I like to consider emotions and the human factor, but I also like to take into consideration hard facts and data, so I'd say 50-50.
Depending on the time of the day, let's say about a half.
50-50, I would love to think, but I think most of them are based on emotions because we're human.
About 60 to 70%.
I'd say at least, I don't know, 60-70%.
60%.
I think emotions come into play a lot, so let's say 70%.
75%.
Oh, at least 80%. I think, we're very emotional animals.
Ooh, I'd say 90%. Probably 90. And then the rest of it is just a hardcore science.
95%.
I'd say probably 99%.
I think emotions drive everything. And it's interesting that you should mention that because in the coming years, I think the board expects IT to be more in tune with the emotional needs of the customer because that's how you can tap into delivering personalized experiences to your customers.
I would say 100%.
All? I don't know. So 80%, I guess, if you say I trust your data.
Okay. So, from the video, between 50% and 100% were the estimates that the people interviewed actually gave, suggesting, percentage of their decisions they felt were based on emotion. If we look at the research, it tells us that typically 80 to 85% of our decisions are based on emotion. Clearly, everybody's different, but a typical human being, 80 to 85% of the time, we're going to make our decisions based on emotions. Emotions drive people. People drive business, people drive performance, and so on. So what we can say is that emotions are incredibly important to be aware of in all aspects of business and life. And as listeners, as communicators, this is an area which we've got to be very, very aware of, both in terms of our own emotions and the emotions of the other party. Yeah, what are the emotions of the sender? And stopping to think about this. We see maybe the communicator, the person sending the message, is not very happy. Yeah, we maybe pick up on a bit of annoyance, anger, or is it rage? It's important for us to think about what are the emotions. Stopping to think about this, categorize this in order that we can respond appropriately. Because we say about emotions, if you can name it, you can tame it. If you can name an emotion, That's the first point of being able to tame it both within yourself, your own emotions, and how you then respond to other people to actually manage that emotion. Emotions are important. We don't want to get rid of emotions. We can't get rid of emotions. That's what differentiates us from artificial intelligence. We need emotions, but it's how we tame, how we manage emotions to make the best decisions and to communicate in the best way. So very important that we're monitoring this in our communication and identifying, being aware of our own emotions and identifying by all the signals that we're talking about what the emotions of the sender are. And this also brings us to the whole area of influence. Yeah, as communicators, business communication is about influencing. Yeah, being leaders is about influencing. And we have, you may have come across this before, you may not, we have a very, very simple formula that we share with people to talk about influence and how we can really, really determine how we influence people and grow our influencing skills. So we say C plus T equals I. All right, you'll probably work out that I is influence. C plus T is what? C is connection. Connection. To connect with people, it's about keying in to their emotion, understanding what they need, how they're feeling, and what they need in a communication experience. T, trust, building trust. So C plus T equals I. Connection plus trust equals influence. So much of this is about emotional connection. So rule number 4, be aware of the emotions and consciously stop and think about it. How am I feeling? What emotions am I detecting on the part of the speaker or the sender of the communication? Rule number 5 is about using questions to clarify. Very, very important. It's very difficult often to take out the true meaning of a communication, particularly if it's detailed, without clarifying, without stopping to clarify. If you think about when you go to a restaurant and you place an order, the waiter or waitress will or should always repeat the order, clarify, have I heard you correctly? Yeah, often if they don't do that, the order may not go that well. Yeah, similar principle here. So I'm going to ask you now to take a little bit of a challenge. All right, a little bit of a challenge. All you're going to need, guys, is to take a piece of paper and a pen. Piece of paper and a pen. So I invite you to take part in this challenge. Piece of paper and a pen. So I'll give you a couple of seconds to get your pen and paper ready. And then when you're ready, all I want you to do is just follow the instructions that I'm going to give. Yeah, obviously this is anonymous. We can't see what you create here, but just follow the instructions that you hear. There's no opportunity here to ask any questions or to clarify. Yes, I just want you to follow the instructions as I give them to you. So, first thing, please draw a square. Second thing, draw a circle above and to the left of the square. Third thing, draw 4 squares inside the square you have drawn. Number 4, draw a rectangle on the bottom of the square. Draw another rectangle to the right of the square. Number 6, Draw two slanted lines that meet at the top of the square. Draw 8 triangles around the circle you drew at the beginning. Draw a circle inside the rectangle, inside the square. Draw a cloud shape on top of the rectangle, outside the square. Okay, now I know a couple of people put questions on the chat. I didn't answer those on purpose, yeah, because at the beginning I wanted you to do this without asking questions, yeah. Now, this is what I wanted you to draw. Have a look. See where it's going? Okay, this is the picture I wanted us all to end up with. Now, some of you may have something that resembles this, others maybe not so. Others maybe not so, yeah? How much easier that exercise would have been if you'd been able to ask me, where's the circles to go, on which side, how big, should they be spaced out? Without being able to ask questions, very, very difficult to get the complete message. Yeah. So let me ask you this question now. How many of your pictures looked exactly like this? Oh, so we've got Roel is saying, oh. So I'm assuming there, Roel, that your picture maybe doesn't look exactly like this. But I'm sure that if you've been able to stop me and ask questions and say, can you repeat that? Or can you tell me, does it go above, below, to the side? Yeah, in what proportion? Maybe your picture would have looked a little bit more like this, yeah? Simple exercise. Doesn't matter if your picture doesn't look like this. The bottom line, the key message here is it's very difficult to receive, decode, and understand without giving feedback, without asking questions or clarifying. Yeah, this is why it's so important that we think about, as listeners, questions, using questions to confirm our understanding. So, please don't, Rowan is saying it is very, very different. That's okay. And when I first did that exercise, mine was too. It didn't look anything like that picture. Okay, so questions then. Think about your questioning. We all know about questioning, yeah? But are you using the different questioning techniques to best effect as listeners? Think about the different kinds of questions. Closed questions. This is where we're looking for a yes and no. Yeah, so in this exercise we've just done, you might have been able to ask me in a different circumstance, should the circle be above the triangle? And I could have said yes or no. Okay, then the circle might have gone in the right place, yeah? Open questions. This is where we're looking for more details, opinions, opening up a conversation. So you might have asked me a question in that exercise, how big should the triangle be? And I could have guided you. And again, the picture might have come out a little bit more like mine. Probing questions. This is where we're looking for additional information or clarification. Can you give me some more information about the cloud shape, for example? Yeah, so three different types of question types. Also what we call funneling questioning technique. This is where we start with an open question. Yeah? Tell me about this, or what about this? Then we probe. Can I have a little bit more information? And then we clarify at the end. So it should be like this, yes or no. All these different questioning techniques, we need to be thinking about it as listeners to make sure that we are decoding correctly, understanding, and then able to respond better in communication. Okay, so questioning, very, very important. We say asking the right question at the right time can save lives. I have a little video clip to share with you to show this, yeah? Have a look at this one. If only they'd asked the right question, yeah? Asking the right question at the right time really can make a difference between getting the understanding or actually getting the result that you need. Very important. And then the final rule number 6. Rule number 6 in the golden rules for effective listening is to summarize and reflect back. Remember I said a little bit earlier, this is a little bit when we go into a restaurant, or a cafe, and we place our order, and the waiting person will say, can I just repeat your order back? Check I've got everything correct. Yeah, it's the same thing for us. The same thing in any kind of listening situation. Very, very important. It also demonstrates that we've truly been present and that we're listening. So here, we're thinking about describing our understanding of both the contents of what we've heard and how the person feels, demonstrating that we understand this and confirming mutual understanding or seeking clarification. So words and phrases like this, yeah, let me see if I understood correctly. Yeah, do I understand you to mean 1 through 3? So what you're saying is, so we kind of paraphrase it, yeah, to just demonstrate that we've absorbed and we've got an understanding, yeah? Or I think what you're saying, or I think what you must be feeling is 1, 2, 3. Very, very important as a double check. Have I got the right understanding here? Have I decoded correctly? Word of warning here, beware. In this area, we shouldn't be expressing any kind of approval or disapproval, and we should be encouraging the speaker to keep talking. Yeah, we shouldn't be shutting them down. So no judgment here. It's just a kind of a repeating back. This is what I think you've conveyed to me in facts, or this is how I think you must be feeling about this. Very, very important step number 6. So guys, they are the golden rules of effective listening. Yeah, the golden rules of effective listening. These are things that we should be thinking about proactively applying to be truly, truly effective listeners. But how do we actually do this? This can be the hardest part, to think about our communication and how we can actually apply this. How do we actually get started? And one of the ways that I work with people in terms of developing the communication skills, whether people want to develop their listening skills as coaches, as managers, or just as human beings, is to think about our communication touch points. What are your main communication touch points? And what is a communication touch point? It can be any episode, any situation in which a customer, this is in a business environment, yeah, either internal or external, comes into contact with either an organization, a team, or an individual, and then gets an impression of either culture, values, or service. Yeah, so it's a communication encounter. So you might be able to think of examples in terms of your own activity. It could be one-to-one meetings with manager, colleagues, with your team members. It could be team meetings. It could be things that you're regularly doing as part of your job, answering customer inquiry, complaints, and so on. So what are your key communication touch points? And one way that we can start to think about this is to actually map out, okay? Identify what your key touch points are. How frequent they are. Is this something that you're dealing with, having to experience on a daily basis? Is it a weekly thing? Is it a monthly thing? Yeah. What are the expectations and the emotions for myself and the other party in this communication touch point? What do I expect? How am I likely to be feeling? And what about the other party? Identifying what the communication channel is. Is it face-to-face? Is it a virtual meeting online? Is it a telephone meeting? What is it? What could be the potential barriers to empathic listening? And what can I commit to do to improve? This is one way of us starting to apply this in our main communication encounters. And this can be applied in the workplace, and it can be applied in our personal lives as well. So one of the things there that we've got to stop and think about is barriers. Yeah, what is it that could be getting in the way? And I think I'd probably like to stop and ask now, what do you think are your main barriers to listening? Anybody like to volunteer? What do you think might be your barriers? We've talked about what we should be doing. Yeah. What do you think are the main things that might get in the way for you in terms of applying those golden rules every time? So let's just maybe give us your thoughts on the live chat. What do you think is getting in the way for you? Your main barriers to listening. Any barriers? Okay, yes. So I'm seeing, yeah, lack of concentration, Roel, absolutely. Nadine, yeah, excitement to reply back. Yeah, we're so excited. You know, maybe we're very excited about what we want to say and our response, so we're not stopping to think and really tune into the signals from the other party about, you know, their thoughts or their emotions. Yeah, concentration often can be an issue, distractions and so on. Any other barriers that you can think of that could be getting in the way for you for being truly outstanding listeners? Unclear voice, yes. Inability to focus, yeah. All of these things, yeah. Noelle, Mary, yeah. Okay, well, there can be a whole range of different barriers, Typically, the ones that we hear most are bias. Yeah, we all as human beings carry with us some element of bias. This can be based on our experience, it can be based on our backgrounds, the environment, but bias can get in the way of us really understanding what's being expressed and the perception and the perspective of the other party. Distractions. I think this is what was being said here, Roel, in terms of lack of concentration, inability to focus. Yeah, language, particularly in this part of the world. So many of us are working, dealing with people who've got different first languages. The language can be a big barrier. Misinterpretation, mood, the whole emotional thing. Yeah, this is why it's so important for us to understand our own emotions as speakers and listeners. Insufficient interest. We're all guilty of this at some time. Yeah, topics which maybe isn't so exciting to us, and we tend to switch off. Yeah, lack of understanding can be another main barrier. The speaker themselves. Yeah, this can be linked to insufficient interest. Sometimes if a speaker's got a particular accent or they've got particular mannerisms which are distracting, it can be a barrier to us listening effectively. the topic, level of detail, that can come back into insufficient interest. Time pressure, which is something we all experience at some point. Physical barriers, it depends on the communication channel, but that can be a significant barrier, and cultural differences or perceived cultural differences. So I think it's important for us we've got here unclear accent, unclear tone, disagreement, and that can be maybe linked to bias or maybe not. But if we disagree with something, then we're not maybe necessarily being open and keying into what's being said and truly listening. So we've got to think about all these barriers. Think about what your barriers are at the different touch points, and think about this: can you break through? The first step is identifying your barrier, and then thinking about how that is possibly preventing you being a magnificent communicator. And remember, so much of what we know, we learn from listening. So we could be missing out on learning key things about our business, about our lives, by not being open, by letting these barriers get in the way to our listening. So just an example here as to how we could actually map out our touch point analysis. I'll give you an example here. A touch point could be handling a customer complaint. This might be something you do as part of your work, it might not be. Frequency could be weekly. Communication channel could be phone or face-to-face. Expectations, emotions. For ourselves, we're hoping to handle this as efficiently as possible. We could be experiencing stress. It could be an angry customer. Something's gone wrong. Maybe we've been responsible for something that's gone wrong or not been delivered as it should have been. And this could be what the emotion we're experiencing. The other party wants to be able to express their feelings and secure a solution. Possible emotions could be anger, disappointment, fear. But we've got to think about them, anticipate them, and also identify them at that communication touch point. Possible barriers at this touch point could be time pressure. Of course, we've got to handle this complaint. We've got many, many other things to do as well, and we're under pressure. It could be distractions, other things going on, and we're kind of half listening to this conversation, and we're half listening to something else because we're under pressure. Commitments, kind of commitments we could make is okay to be present, to eliminate distractions as much as possible, to proactively identify emotions and engage empathy. And then to summarize the discussions, ask questions where we need to, summarize discussions and demonstrate focus. This is just an example as to how we can bring all of this together in terms of key communication touch points and a plan for us as to how we can actually improve. Because we know that if we just communicate, we get by. We get a job done. More or less okay. But if we can communicate skillfully, we can work miracles. We can connect with people. We can influence. And this is how, as we grow as leaders and develop our communication and interaction skills, we need to be thinking about, communicating skillfully. So much of it is about listening. So, key takeaways from this, Communication is always a two-way process. We have to remember this. Two-way process. Remembering the golden rules for active listening. From session 1, how we acknowledge the sender proactively. How we be present in that communication and show that we're present. How we observe the non-verbal cues. We know they are more important even than the words. We have a saying in English, it's not what you say, but how you say it. And it's so true. We can pick up so much from the non-verbal cues if we want to, if we tune into it. It's about identifying the emotions in yourself and in the speaker, in the sender. Thinking about using questions skillfully to clarify. And reflecting back to confirm understanding. golden rules for active listening. And the way we can put all this together is think about our communication touch points, what the opportunities are, yeah, and how maybe we're missing some of the opportunity by not thinking about our listening skills, yeah, what the barriers are, and planning a listening strategy at each key touch point. Yeah, what is my strategy going to be? Which of these areas can I put in and really focus on to make myself a truly empathic listener? As we say, we started off by saying this: communication only works well for those who really work at it. And we've got to continue to do this through our lives. And then the other thing that we said back in the first session, yeah, being aware, constantly aware, as the Greek philosopher said, we've got 2 ears and only 1 mouth. So we can listen twice as much as we speak. But are we always doing that? Sometimes we've got to pull ourselves back and really focus on listening. Yeah, as I saw on the chat box here, sometimes we're so excited that we want to speak. Yeah, we stop being truly effective listeners. We jump in. We've got to really focus on pulling ourselves back and listening. Two-way process. Two-way process. So, time-wise, can I ask, anybody got any other questions, thoughts, feedback, comments, anything that anybody would like to ask me? I think we've got a few minutes left to throw it open to any general questions if anybody has any. As Roel said here, communication is everything. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, communication opens people's potential to much more. Yeah, we need our other skills as well, but communication is what can take us to the next level. Any other questions from anybody else, please? Questions. Yes, so question here. How do we identify emotions when people are wearing masks? That's a very good question. And I remember at the beginning of the whole COVID scenario last year, reading something about teachers. Teachers having to really work in a different way to understand, first of all, to convey their emotions and convey messages when they were wearing masks, and also in some situations where students or pupils were wearing masks, to understand whether people were kind of picking up the meanings and understanding the content of lessons, yeah? And then we've got to look at the other verbal, non-verbal cues, yeah? So we've got to look at the eyes, yeah? We've got to look at the posture, we've got to look at the gestures. Difficult, it does make it more difficult. We can't necessarily see instantly whether somebody's smiling, but we can learn to pick up other signals. We've got to move to the other features and look at people's body language. Is it open? Is the posture upright? Are they alert? Yeah, but it does cause us a bit more of a challenge, and that we don't have as many cues open to us whilst we're still wearing masks. So very good question. Thank you for that. Any more questions? I'm not seeing any more questions on the chat. Okay, so I'd like to just finish, please, by thanking you all for your attendance. Thank you for your interaction. Thank you for drawing the picture, even if they all turned out a little bit different. That was the idea of the exercise. I'd like to thank TDRA as well for giving us this opportunity to share what we believe is a very, very important programme with everyone. So thank you, everybody, and take care. Hope to see you all again soon. Thank you.